This week, as we continue on working on the 12 steps, we're going to be talking about step 5, admitted to God, ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Matt, what does that step mean to you?
Well, for me, we take a look at ourselves with the 4th step where we make a list of, everything in our 1st step. And in step 5, I got to do like a confessional. For me, it was like a confessional with my sponsor, and it was a freeing experience, And then at the end of it, when we got into the meditation part of it, it was I got to see my part of it, and to quote something you say all the time, I got to know myself so I could see myself coming.
That's good. Eric?
The 5th step to me really was a sense of freedom, I think. These are things that I didn't even want to look at myself, to admit them to another person or to God was really freeing. It was like a burden was lifted off of me. I didn't have to carry it by myself anymore.
That's good. Chris?
Step 5 was very intimidating for me. I lived a life of lies, so coming out with the truth was difficult, but having someone there to help me, my sponsor, bring them out. Once they were out, it was very relieving. So.
That's good. Ben?
Step 4 and 5, I knew was the foundation I wanted to build my recovery on, and I needed to make a commitment to myself, to another human being, and to God for what I did, and I wanted to shed light on all the darkness that my using has brought up.
Tonight we're going to be talking about step 5, and you just heard from 4 champions on how important and how freeing it is to actually work a 5th step with your sponsor. We look forward to learning more about it tonight. God bless you.
How many of you have been in a meeting where they're saying count off in 4s? Raise your hand. I just had one of those moments, and for some odd reason we can never get that right. 1, 3, 1, 2, 4. I just had that moment with my sound guys back there. I was going, turn it up, and I'm trying to get their attention, and all of them are looking at each other, and no one's looking at me. Let's give them a hand. Lord, I thank you for another day above ground and out of prison. Lord, I thank you for bringing me home safely. I thank you for the abundant time you allowed me to have with the people I love. Lord, I thank you for this community of people that mean so much to me. Words cannot express how much they are. I'm not the best communicator. But Lord, tonight I ask that you do the job of explaining in a way that how important it is to admit, how important it is to confess. Lord, give us the strength and guidance. Please give me the words to teach your champions that this is an important step to their freedom. Lord, none of me and all of you have your way here tonight. In your name we pray, amen. The word admit stands out to me, and I say this often, that who do we listen to the most? Ourselves. The most conversations you'll ever have in life are with yourself. And if I'm honest with myself, as Matt Morrow said in the video, you got to get to know yourself so you can see yourself coming. So a guy like me that's been through 11 treatments, I haven't done a very good job of having conversations with myself. But the second word of the 1st step says, we admitted. We are the last people to admit things to ourselves. We can have other people trying to convince us of our behaviors, of the mess we're in, and it's so evident to everybody but ourselves. And this, through the 5th step, is the second time in the 12 steps that you'll hear the word admitted. But in the 1st step, as I've done in weeks past, if you look at this is your addiction. All the consequences, that's my family, my finances, my legal, my health, my homelessness, and this is the abyss of my addiction. And the 1st step allows me to take a step above my addiction and admit that I'm powerless and my life had become unmanageable. My life becoming unmanageable was a process. Just like Teresa said, you pick up where you left off, or even worse. That's what they teach us in treatment. So when I go back to the dope, it's like I never quit. So that unmanageability would join me immediately, but initially it took a while to be unmanageable. So by making the first step, I admit I'm powerless and my life had become unmanageable. I'm now able to look at my addiction in a different view. Down here, I'm in it. So I really can't see the damage it's causing. But when I admit, say admit. Amen. Say admit. Amen. The second step I take is now I got a different view of my addiction. I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. I'm looking at the insanity of my addiction. So many of us try to get our outside world straightened out before we get our inside straightened out. We think the insanity is running 24/7 high on cocaine. Yes, that's insane. But what's more insane is to think that I won't do that if I do cocaine. So the insanity is really in between my two ears. For a guy that's been through 11 treatments, thinking that I would be okay to pick up a drink, a drug, or whatever it is for you that takes you out. So the second step. But the third step, and Josh Templin had taught me this. Now, if you look, the first step was a little step. The second step was still a little step. But the third step is now on a different stage. It opens up life for me in a different element. With God, when I make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of Him, as I understand Him, the possibilities are endless. Who in their wildest dreams would I have thought, a crackhead like me, that I would pastor a church, get remarried, have healthy relationships with my family, and really be in the life that God, not me. So when I made that third step, I had to make sure that I really made a decision. A decision isn't a word, a decision is action. A decision is action, because I thought I had to. So we know now that we can fake the first three steps. Did you work the first step? Yes. You're still down here. You're not using, but you really haven't admitted you're powerless. You really haven't came to believe that a power greater than yourself. Now we're on the third step, and the possibilities with God are endless. So for the last several years, I've been just soaring in a way. But tonight I want to talk to you. 2 weeks ago, we talked about a fourth step. So now there is an area. See, one thing you got to realize, you might have did bad, but you're not all bad. You might have made some mistakes, but you are not a mistake. Just because you're an addict doesn't mean you're damaged goods. But there is an area of your life that you might want to take a look at. It's the why behind the what. The what is addiction, but why? Why? Because in this new life that God has afforded me to give for the umpteenth time, I'm able to really, it doesn't limit me, God is endless, but there's an area of my heart, there's an area of my mind and my being that is, yes, this is a broad landscape, but there's an area where there's some fears. There's some area that is resentful. I got to go, after I made a third step decision, to the area of my life and take another step. And there's reasons why these rails are here for my fourth step. I need somebody's guidance. I need somebody's guidance to make a searching and fearless moral inventory myself. Now, I don't want to tell you about me, so when I get to the fifth step, I need God and I need my sponsor. Those are the rails that keep me in line with this new view. Now I'm saying, that's why I used. That's why I went to all those treatment centers. That's why I left the kids that I love so dearly. When you admit to God, yourself, and another human being the exact nature of your wrongs, there is freedom. But you're not going to be able to do that without guidance. If you knew how to be transparent and vulnerable, you would have been transparent and vulnerable. That's why when people come up to us, how are you doing? I'm fine. We can see, so, this is the second time in the steps now where the steps are saying, admit it. Again, we're the last person to admit something to is myself. I can have all the evidence in the world, but until I admit it to myself, it does no good. You can tell me I'm a junkie and a dope fiend just like Johnny did, but unless I admitted that myself, so now I got another opportunity to admit something again. See, I thought the reason why I was the way I was is because you wronged me. That's not what the fifth step says. The fifth step says the exact natures of my wrongs. So it was wrong for me to have a resentment on you for 20 years. It was wrong for me to wake up every morning full of fear. So I had to categorize those in my fourth step, but here I am now doing my fifth step. And I don't like to admit stuff. I don't want to tell you about my dirt. I don't want to tell you about my fears. But there's something about admitting, and I don't know why my eldest daughter is always here when I'm talking about the fifth step. Now, as a parent, I knew when she was a teenager that she was doing some things that she shouldn't be doing. Now, who's done that? I knew it. God knew it. She knew it, but she wouldn't admit it. There's something powerful about admitting it. There's something powerful, transparent, and really authentic about admitting it. Because here's how God works, and here's how a good human being that loves God should work. Once a person admits it, then we can go forward. But we don't want to admit it. We don't want to admit, and now let's talk about what this step says on your sheet. The exact nature of your wrongs. We like to tell bits and pieces of our wrongs. But we fail to recognize when we just tell God and another human being bits and pieces of our story, there's still bits and pieces in us. I'm telling you bits and pieces, but I'm leaving bits and pieces in me. And those bits and pieces that are in me keep me weighed down. I love it when AA out of the 12 and 12 says, all of AA's 12 steps asked us to go contrary to, this isn't going to be something that's easy. It's contrary to your natural desires. You hear me say it all the time. Do what you don't want to do so you can do what you want to do. But if you do what you want to do, you're going to end up doing what you don't want to do. So you have to admit to yourself, yeah, I want to tell you off. Yeah, I want to really tell you how I feel. I can't. Faith is not a feeling. Faith is a principle. It doesn't say in the 12 steps, practice your feelings in all your affairs. Can you imagine what your life would look like if you practice your feelings in all your affairs? But it goes on to say, they deflate our egos. See, I never understood how I could be homeless and everything I owned in a hefty garbage bag and still have an ego. Be down at 1800 Chicago in an orange suit with an ego. But it makes no sense. It says, when it comes to ego deflation, few steps are harder to take than step 5. But scarcely any step is more necessary to long-term sobriety and peace of mind than this one. See, that's what I love. How many people are not addicts in this room? Raise your hands. There are 50 plus of you. And you still benefit from this material. I drove home from the cabin last Wednesday or Thursday with my son's girlfriend, and we worked the 12 steps on one of her issues. She's not an addict. She doesn't even drink. She's just liberated by the information and the freedom of the 12 steps. But check out what it says here. And it says scarcely. What you're going to see in the literature is this, that almost every step says if you don't work this, you're going to use. Because this is something I've seen on the previous 4. It says, but of the things which really bother us and burn us, we say nothing. Upset, PO'd beyond belief, totally resentful. You good? I'm good. And it's usually not the big stuff that gets us. It's the little nagging little things. I mean, I said this, I taught last night, and I said, I can see that you're not good in your demeanor, and I think you've got a problem with me personally, and I love you. Regardless of what you tell me, I'm still going to love you. But I ask you if you're good. Are you good with me and you? Yeah, I'm good. Who suffers? You do. I don't know why it is addicts and alcoholics did not get offended on the street. The dope men would cut me off, sell bad dope, do this, that, other. I'd just keep on smoking. But if somebody offends me in these rooms, I'm not coming back. So I was a grown man with little boy issues. And I had to grow up. But it says there's a lot of things that burn us and bother us. Certain distressing or humiliating memories we tell ourselves ought to not be shared with anybody. These will remain our secret. We hear it said, you're only as sick as your secrets. Not a soul must ever know. We hope that we'll go to the grave. See, when people get vulnerable with me in a 5th step, I most likely have done the very same thing you did. It's not that earth-shattering. You're not that unique. I mean, we just think like this is so bad. I'm not about war stories, but I've heard a lot of stories. They didn't make me run out of the room and never talk to you again. Quite frankly, they made me love you even more. That you were able to dig deep in that. Check out, what are we likely to receive from step 5? For one thing, we shall get rid of the terrible sense of isolation we've always had. Almost without exception, alcoholics are tortured by loneliness. We can get in a room like this and we feel like we're the only people here. We wonder why no one's paying attention to us, but we walk around with these barricade walls around us. If anybody comes close, we're like this. But then we wonder why we're lonely. I know what that feels like. I know what that feels like. See, that's why I'm grateful for these rooms. It says, even before our drinking got bad and people began to cut us off, one of the greatest acts of love a person can give another person is to cut them off. If someone is hanging on to you with your addiction, they're also hanging on to your addiction with you. Parents, if you're under the sound of my voice, cut them off. Lock the doors. Start praying. See, that's what had to happen with me. You've heard those stories. I told one of them the other day. I came home on a stolen car, parked the car down the thing. My mom fed me for 6 hours. I got a half hour of sleep. I thought I was good for another 3 months. Then I went and robbed the liquor cabinet, but I failed to recognize about 50, because my parents don't drink, but there's liquor in the house back then. I don't know if there is anymore. But I failed to remember 15 years ago I had drank all the liquor and put water in it. So when I got down to the stolen car and I was all excited to take a big thing of Jim Beam, I drank water. Who's the fool? But it says, almost without exception, alcoholics are tortured by loneliness. Even our drinking got bad, people cut us off. Nearly all of us suffered with the feeling that we didn't quite belong. Either we were shy or didn't dare not to draw near to others. We were apt to be noisy and foul. Have you ever seen a person, a grown adult, act out? That means that they're seeking attention. See, when you act out, either we're extremely shy or we're extremely, boisterous when we're yelling about something and losing our minds. And it says craving attention and companionship, but never getting it, at least the way of our thinking. See, the thing that I had to change about myself, you may love me, but I want you to love me a certain way. And if you don't love me the way I want you to love me, I don't think you love me. And that's why so many of us try to fill up love of people that love of God has for us. And we put these unrealistic expectations on people to fulfill needs that only God can fulfill. When we reached AA, for the first time in our life, stood among people who seemed to understand. The sense of belonging was tremendously exciting. We thought the isolation problem had been solved. But we soon discovered that while we weren't alone anymore in a social sense, we still suffered many of our old pangs of anxious apartness. My anxiety, I've shared with you, my mental health stuff. I have high anxiety. It creeps in every now and again, even to this day. So I always was anxious in a crowd. See, when you have God and you make a decision and you get transparent, you can talk in front of a couple hundred people. But when you would have seen me back in the day blowing into a paper bag thinking I was having a heart attack because I would have said that would never happen. Never say never. When you're operating with God, there are no nevers. Don't ever say you'll never get your family back. You'll never get your finances back. You'll never get your happiness back. You'll never get your job. Yes, you will. Say, yes, I will. You got to tell the devil to shut up. Don't mess with him too much because he ain't no joke, but you got to quit listening to him. But it's so important that we grasp this. It says, until we had talked complete candor of our conflicts, we had listened to someone else do the same. I love it when people get transparent. We still didn't belong. Step 5 was the answer. It was the beginning of true kinship with man and God. See, all of my relationships up until step 5 were screwed up because I was in them. And when I admitted the exact nature of my wrongs, I had to come to the conclusion they were screwed up because of me. Because of me. It says the vital step was also the means by which we began to get the feeling that we could be forgiven. You can be forgiven. I've done a lot of dirt to a lot of people. And God has forgiven me, and for that I'm grateful. And if you've been forgiven, you should be a forgiver. Those who have been forgiven much, forgive much. Check this out. Check out what it says here. It says, no matter what we had thought or done. Often it was while working on this step, our sponsors or spiritual advisors, that we first felt truly to forgive others, no matter how deeply We felt they had wronged us. Our moral inventory had persuaded us that all around you got to forgive everybody. And forgiveness is not an event, it's a process. It will take time to forgive certain people of certain things. But understanding that you're the one in prison while you're walking in unforgiveness. You're the one that's captive, and it goes on to say, but it was only we resolutely tackled step 5 that we inwardly knew we were able to receive forgiveness and give it to. In order to achieve things in life, you have to learn how to receive things in life. A lot of us were either extremely people pleasers or we were takers. We took and we took and we took until we had nothing left. But a lot of us that are extreme givers do not know how to receive. Another dividend we may expect from confiding our defects to another human being is humility, a word often misunderstood. To those who have made progress in AA, it amounts to a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. You cannot be what you could be and what you used to be at the same time. You cannot be who you used to be. That's why I love Rick Warren. Pastor Rick says, if you live a life where your past is forgiven, your present has meaning, and your future is secure. Can you imagine if you lived a life believing that? I mean, that's truly a huge, huge, huge blessing. But I had to realize that there is a part of me that is rotten, and there still is. You hear me say it, Freddie ain't dead. And Freddie can pop up at any time. It's whatever side of me I feed. So we got to understand that you got to get to know yourself so you can see yourself coming. Therefore, our first practical move towards humility must consist of recognizing our deficiencies. See, a lot of us, because of our egos, just want to talk about things that we want to talk about. But what about start talking about things that you don't want to talk about? I can't even be at a dinner table anymore when they're talking about the Minnesota Wild. Let's get real. How are your kids doing? Well, they hit a home run last night. No, I ain't talking about the home run. How are they feeling? What are they doing? Who are they hanging around? When I get with my kids, we talk about deep stuff. See, life is too short. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow. And I don't want to go to bed tonight with any stone left unturned. See, I understand that what I could have been. I don't want to live my life on what I could have been, woulda, coulda, shoulda. And it goes on to say, a defect cannot be corrected unless we clearly see what it is. The only thing that's wrong with being wrong is if you think you're right. How can you correct something that you don't think needs to be corrected? Check out what it says. But we shall have to do more than see. We soon found that we could not wish or will away by, I wish I wouldn't smoke crack. Did that work? I wish I wouldn't drink. I wish I wouldn't get angry. I wish I wouldn't have fears. That doesn't, it's more powerful than that. You can't just wish to stop drinking. You can't wish to stop being angry every day. It doesn't work. You need the power of God. It says we need outside help. See, one of the greatest things we can do is ask for help. If we surely to know and admit the truth about ourselves, the help of God in another human being. God always answers a problem with a person. God has never audibly talked to me. He doesn't come down in a lightning bolt. All those years ago, He answered one of my problems with this person. He answered another problem with my mom. So you're that person. That you're the answer for somebody else's problem, the God in you. Not you. Don't get your ego all out of whack. The God in you will answer other people's problems. See, and now check it out. Only discussing ourselves, holding back nothing. Why do we want to tell 90% of the truth? We just, and that 10% always comes back to bite us. But we tell 90%, we hold the most valuable information back. And it said, check this out. Holding back nothing, only be willing to take advice and accept direction. I quit counseling people that just want to waste my time. Why are you asking for advice that you're not going to follow? I think that inflates the ego. Well, at least I told one of my loved ones last night that was in turmoil about a decision she made. She goes, well, I went for you for counsel. I said, no, you did not. You informed me of what you were going to do. There's a big difference of you thinking you got counsel from your advisor than just telling them what to do. And then she admitted that was true. And then we got down to business. The power of admitting. The power to say, yeah, I made the wrong move. Everybody knows and you know you made the wrong move, but the ego wants to tell everybody you're fine. Everybody can see we're not fine. But our ego makes us separate from other people. Could we set foot on the road of straight thinking, solid honesty, and genuine humility? Can you imagine what your life would look like with straight thinking, solid honesty, and genuine humility? It says when we are honest with another person, it confirms that we have been honest with ourselves. Again, who do you have the most conversations with? Yourself. Who convinces you to do the majority of what you do? Yourself. And if you admit to yourself, see, if you can lie to yourself, you can lie to other people. Before you tell a lie, you have to lie to yourself that it's okay to tell the lie. Before you drink, you have to lie to yourself to tell yourself it's okay to drink. But by doing a fifth step, you're being transparent, not just with God and the other person, but also with yourself. It says, how many times have we heard of well-intentioned people claim the guidance of God when it was all too plain that they were sorely mistaken? That means there's going to be pain with the decision you just made. God told me to do it. Check out what the literature says here. Now, I'm not that advanced at I run it by my mentor. Lacking practice and humility, well, I'm going to make this decision to do this, even though every time I've done this, it never has worked out, but I do believe God's telling me to do it. Check it out. I haven't been good at it. Lacking both practice and humility, well, I'm going home after 2 months of being here. Well, last time we were here, how long were we here? 2 months. What happened? I got high. Remember what I told you about common sense? I didn't have much of it. Because I was the type of dad that wanted to go home and make up for lost time and be super dad just to leave again in 3 months. And what it's saying here is so true that we're not good at some of this stuff. We need help. Had deluded themselves and were able to justify most nonsense on the ground. And this was that God told them to do it. Now, this isn't the Bible. This is AA teaching us this. It was worth noting that these people that have very high spiritual development almost always insist on checking with friends. Now, I'm going to check that one for a second because we know how to get what answers from who. If I want an answer to give me okay, I'll go to him on this, him on that, and him on this. No, you have one person. So, I mean, just like I said last night, offended people hang out with offended people. Look who's sitting around who. No disrespect. I don't got time for nonsense. I ain't got time for negativity. I'm above ground, not a prison. I should be grateful. I don't want to sit around somebody that's negative. I mean, this is a gift. Recovery's a gift. I don't know what it took for you to come here, but I shouldn't be here. So if you don't want to be here, I don't want to sit next to you. Because this is important to me. And beyond being important to me, it's important to my children. And beyond being important to my children, my parents, it's important to their unborn children that their granddad is alive. I don't want them going to the grave site. I want to talk face to face to my grandchildren. See, but I was that guy too that didn't want to be here. And it was part of my process. But it says insist on speaking with spiritual advisors the guidance they feel that they had received from God. Anytime you think you heard anything from God, you should check with somebody that's above you in spiritual authority to confirm that you heard from God. Otherwise, you're just informing people what you're doing. And no one's going to stop you. You got free will. And then once you fall, don't have too much pride to say it was the wrong move. Who cares? Let's get back to where we were. That's what I love about these rooms. I walked in after major relapses and never been judged once. And you, as well as God, when you come back after a bad move, God is not mad at you. He's just grateful to see you again. It says, many in AA, once agnostic or atheist, I told you my story about the atheist. You know, he calls me Jesus when I go to Super America. I said, that's the highest compliment I've ever gotten. He says, what's Jesus saying today? And you know what I said to him? I love him. I build him up. I introduced him to my son at 4 in the morning when we were coming back from Chicago. But I just told him a couple weeks ago, you heard me say it, and I said, you know what? If I'm wrong about Jesus, I don't know the ramifications about that, but if you are, there are some. So since you're here, you might as well discover that there is a God, whatever that is for you. No one's forcing anything on you. But it's saying during step 5 was the first actual felt the presence of God. That's because you're being your authentic self by being transparent and telling people really who you are. And even those who had faith already often become conscious of God as they never did before. This feeling of being at one with God and man is the emerging of isolation, from isolation, through the open and honest sharing of a terrible burden of guilt, brings you to a resting place where we may prepare ourselves for the following steps in meaningful sobriety. Your sobriety should mean something. Your sobriety should benefit somebody other than just you. NA, we have built this foundation on spiritual principles such as surrender, honesty, trust, faith, willingness, courage. With each step forward in our recovery, we strengthen our commitment to these principles. Principles, not feelings. We reaffirm our commitment to recovery by immediately working a step 5. If we allow our feelings of shame and the fear of change, I hate change. I hate it. This belt that I have on, I mean, I don't want to change it. And it is raggedy and it barely even works. But changing a belt is a big deal for me. I almost started crying when my old belt broke. So change is difficult. But if you don't change, your clean date will. If you don't change, your clean date will. And there's always pain. There's the pain of staying the same or the pain of change. Either way, it's going to be painful. And if the pain of change will serve a purpose. But it says this, and it says, if we allow our feelings of shame and fear and change and rejection to stop our progress, our problems will only be compounded. If we stop moving forward in our recovery, if we keep making every possible effort to recover, we will be given into the disease of addiction. Do you understand if you're not working the steps that you're giving into your addiction? If you don't have a sponsor, without even knowing it, you're giving into your addiction. It's just a matter of time before we pick up. Working this, but that's what AA teaches us. Rarely have we seen a person fail. That means that you can work a solid program and still mess up. That scares me. This stuff is no joke. This stuff kills people. As we are sitting here, people are dying in their addiction. Jean and Sue are here. Stand up. I told you when I did your daughter's funeral, I would honor you for the rest of my life. Their daughter is dead. Dead. And if somebody is here complaining about being here and nodding off while you're here, think of their daughter, because you are disrespecting her memory. Let's give them a hand. You know I shoot straight with you. I mean, I'm just going to come. I didn't want my drinks watered down, so I'm not going to teach you recovery watered down. I didn't want my dope cut with coffee creamer. I wanted the raw cocaine. So when you come here, you're going to get truth in the raw. And the truth isn't going to adjust itself to you. You need to adjust yourself to it. And the truth, there's one thing I know about it, it hurts. Because when I finally did go to treatment and I had every excuse for not being there because of my work and my company that I thought I was running, that I hadn't been to for weeks, my children that would miss me, that I didn't pay attention to for months, I had every excuse why I couldn't be in treatment. And the guy said to me, Pastor Terry, I said, I got a business, I got my family, I can't do this. He says, the only thing you got is a crack habit. That hurt. And it was truth. And it was truth. And I need people in my life to speak that type of truth in my life. It says, following the third step decision, the action of the fourth and fifth steps will lead a close relationship with your higher power. Why is it so important that we make an admission to God? Because this is a spiritual program. And the whole purpose is to awaken spiritually and develop that relationship. In the past, some of us felt that we weren't worthy of a relationship. God is not mad at you. He wouldn't have saved you if he was mad at you. He wouldn't have saved you if he didn't think you were worth saving. You did not save yourself. No matter what you believe in, you prayed to something. And that something was God. See, I didn't know what it was, but I knew I had to get to the end of myself. The end of myself is where God begins. The end of myself. And I had to get out, as the fifth step says, to other people. And check out what it says. In the past, some of us felt that we weren't worthy. Yes, you are worthy. You might have did it, but you're not it. Our secrets blocks our ability to feel any acceptance or love from that. How could they love me? I was a terrible father. How could God love me? I'm a drug addict. How could God love me? I'm a drug dealer. How could God love me? I'm selling this. How could God love me? I'm stealing that. How could God love me? I abandoned my family. Yet He loved me all through it. And if you don't think that's who God is, you don't know who God is. Too many of us have an interpretation of who God is because somebody else was a hypocrite that was representing Him. And let me share you something about me and you. You're going to be a hypocrite too. Because you ain't perfect. Don't hold other people to standards you can't keep. None of us are God. And we will all fail each other. And when you fail a person or they fail you, you will find out at that moment what that person really meant to you if you can forgive them. Can you get... See, the thing about people like us is this. We want everybody to get past our mistakes, but we hold your mistakes hostage. Don't make no sense. And we're the ones that are hostage. Check out what it says. When we reveal something about ourselves, we draw closer to God. It says the feeling that God of our understanding accepts us, no matter what we've done, enhances our acceptance of yourself. Why is it that you put your thoughts about you more and above what God thinks about you? Why do you let the courts or the exes or the bank or the judge tell you you're a loser? God says you're a winner. So who are you going to pay attention to? See, we tend to listen to the things that are negative more than the things... I'd say people all the time, you're a champion. Well, I don't believe I'm a champion. Well, that's the problem. You are what you believe. I needed somebody to believe for me before I had a sense of belief. And that's why I think these communities are so important. The process that we have undertaken so far has made us aware of the exact nature of wrong. The nature of the wrongs comes from the nature of your flesh. There's a side of every human being, even my mom, who I consider Mother Teresa, has a nature about her that ain't no good. It's biblical. We all have flesh. So that's where it comes from. You're not a bad person, and whatever side of you feed will win. The exact nature of these wrongs is our character defects. We now know that the patterns of our lives were rooted in dishonesty, fear, selfishness, and a manner of other defects of character. We've seen the whole spectrum of our defects, and we are ready for something new. With this readiness, we're ready to work step 6. NA basic text. The fifth step is the key to freedom, not just sobriety. It allows us to live clean in the present, share the exact nature of our wrongs, and set us free to live. After taking the thorough 4-step, we deal with the contents of our inventory. We are told that if we keep these defects inside of us, they will lead us back to using. Holding on to our past would eventually sicken us and keep us from taking part of our new way of life. For years, we avoided seeing ourselves who we really were. I am such a procrastinator. I have gotten so much better. I had to make a phone call today to a person out west, and I was avoiding the phone call. Why would I avoid something that I needed to do, even though it wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation? Because I'm used to living in limbo. But once I made that phone call and it wasn't a pleasant phone call, it was fine. What are you avoiding right now that you need to take care of? Some of you may need to go check yourself into the county jail because of a warrant. Go do it. Why go to bed every night wondering if they're coming? It ain't going to be as... How many of you should be doing long-term sentences in prison? Well, why are you out? Because God took care of it. It's never as bad as we make it out to be. And it says these defects grow in the dark. They die in the light of exposure. Totally biblical. We cannot afford to make this mistake. This step will expose our motives and our actions. We cannot expect these things to reveal themselves. They will in future behavior because they're rooted in something. Our embarrassment is eventually overcome and we can avoid future guilt. What you don't deal with today will deal with you tomorrow. Write that down, Jacqueline. What you don't deal with today will deal with you tomorrow. What you don't own today will own you tomorrow. What are you holding on to? What is holding you back? It's time to let go. And it says, where once we had spiritual theories, we now to begin awaken to spiritual reality. This initial examination of ourselves usually reveals some behavior patterns that we don't particularly like about ourselves. However, facing these patterns and bringing them in the open makes it possible for us to deal with them constructively. If you don't learn how to deal with things constructively, you'll live a life of destruction. If you don't deal with it, it will deal with you. We cannot make these changes alone. Those are the guardrails up there. We need the help of God as we understand Him in the fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous. James 5:16 as we close. Confession is the gateway to God and freedom. Check this out. Confess to one another. This is biblical. 5th step, that's where they got it from. Confess to one another, therefore, your faults. Does everybody know what you're thinking? If your mind was a movie, what would it be rated? Would you let your grandkids watch it? Confess your faults. That's your thoughts, your slips. You did it. You fell. You made a mistake. Big deal. Confess it. Your false steps, your offenses, your sins. And pray also for one another. When you pray for people, your prayers are answered. Check this out. That you may be healed. I don't need to be just sober. I need to be healed from what made me drink. And restored to a spiritual tone of mind and heart. The earnest, heartfelt, continued prayer. Why can we not pray when things are good? Why do we only pray when we're overdosing? Why do we only pray in front of the judge? Why do we only pray when we're looking in the rear view drunk and a cop is behind us and now we're getting our umpteenth DWI? What would your life look like if you never stopped praying? Pray when you get your kids back. Pray after you get a job, not just before God gives you the job. Thank Him day 1, thank Him day 30, thank Him day 365. Maybe after a year of working at the same place, you'll still be grateful for your employer. Not saying I should be making more money, they're underappreciated, this guy doesn't even like me. I mean, when we get here, it's not like we're like this strong list of employable people. I got a track record of cheating on expense reports, calling in sick when I was high, and lying about everything I was doing. Will you hire me, please? I mean, it's kind of like some of us guys, right? When we're got our big egos with the women. What do you tell the woman about yourself? I left my kids because of crack. I have 10 cents to my name. And up until now, all my relationships have been screwed up. Will you date me? No, you put on some masquerade of awesomeness that isn't even true. I mean, I'm talking about me, so don't start tripping. The day I met her, the second day I met her, I said, I'm a crack addict. I got divorced. I'm broke, but I love Jesus. I didn't pretend to be something that I wasn't. But every relationship up until that point, that was me. And it goes on to say, the earnest, heartfelt. I have heartfelt prayers for each and every one of you today. Prayer of a righteous man. You're all righteous because each and every one of you got back up. The unrighteous stay down. The righteous get back up. It's not some holy roller mentality. If God has got a sense of humor, He must, because I'm a pastor. Makes tremendous power available, dynamic in His working. There is a power of prayer. The power of my mom's prayer got me to this pulpit. The power of my mom's prayer. And I'll close with this. If someone saves your life, you better live it. God bless you.